We are now down at the boat dock for pontoons for Lake Lure. We will be going on a tour on the pontoon, and I'm going to take you with us.
Folks, Lake Lure is a man-made lake.
I'm sending everybody.
It was the vision of one person, and that was Lucius Morse. Dr. Morse was a medical doctor who practiced in Missouri until 1899 when he contracted tuberculosis. He read the medical journal that the climate of western North Carolina was good for him, so he checked himself into the sanitarium at Black Mountain. That's about 20 miles by road from here. While he was there, he spent a lot of time on horseback sightseeing, and on one of his early trips in 1902, he saw Chimney Rock for the first time. He was so impressed, he paid the owner 25 cents to give him a mule ride to the top. When he got up there and looked around, he decided to buy the thing. He contacted his older twin brothers, and the three of them bought Chimney Rock for 64 acres for $5,000. Dr. Morse purchased an additional 8,000 acres around here and had a big plan to develop the acreage with lakes surrounded by hotels, restaurants, clubs, casinos, and the like. He started a hydroelectric dam in 1925 to dam up the Rocky Broad River. The dam was completed in 1926, and the lake was fully filled by the end of 1927. It wasn't too long after that Dr. Morse's company began to have financial problems and filed bankruptcy, and he lost both the dam and the lake. This is now one of the few municipally owned lakes in the state. Over on the left is Morse Park, named after the doctor. It's got a pretty walking trail that's about a mile long, and that little gazebo is one of the very popular places in western North Carolina to hold outdoor weddings. If any of you like to fish, it's a pretty good lake to be on. The lake contains large and smallmouth bass, brim, crappie, white bass, lake trout, rainbow trout, and catfish. The largest fish ever caught in the lake was a catfish. It was caught near the dam and weighed 95 pounds. The largest bass ever pulled out of the lake was 14.5 pounds, caught last year. If you're interested in movies, they filmed several around here. The Last of the Mohicans with Daniel Day-Lewis had the last 17 minutes filmed at or around Chimney Rock. The scene at the end of the movie where the young woman threw herself in the waterfall was filmed at Hickory Nut Falls, which is just on the Asheville side of Chimney Rock. The comedy, My Fellow Americans, with Jack Lemmon and James Garner, had some scenes filmed on the walking trail in the park. There was a horror movie called Firestarter with Drew Barrymore and George C. Scott that had scenes filmed at the other end of the lake. But by far the most famous and popular movie shot in the area was Dirty Dancing with Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze. That movie was filmed in 1987. About 40% of it was filmed here. Most of the rest was filmed at Mountain Lake Lodge in Virginia. That lodge is still in operation today. There are about 630 houses on the lake. Only about a fourth of those are owner-occupied year-round. Most of the rest are summer houses. There are some rental houses on the lake. To the best of my knowledge, there are no celebrities who either own property or live here at the lake. Just past the new lake buoy is the Chimney River. It originates near Black Mountain. That little river supplies almost all of the water to the lake. Once it leaves here, it meanders through South Carolina, goes through Columbia, picks up several other rivers on its way to the Atlantic Ocean, where it empties out around Charleston. We are coming up to Firefly Cove. They filmed the water scenes with Dirty Dancing in Firefly Cove. The studio chose the cove for a couple of reasons. First, it's confined water, and they wouldn't have to worry about boat traffic while they had the actors in the water. The more important reason is there used to be a boys' summer camp located there. It was called Chimney Rock Boys Camp. When the studio saw the camp with its buildings, they realized they could use the buildings in the movie. They wouldn't have to build sets and have to save time and money. right of the top of the staircase. Now, most people who are familiar with Dirty Dancing believe it was filmed in the summer. It was actually filmed in late October and early November. And that's important because the water in Lake Lure typically ranges from the low 40s in the winter to the low 70s in the summer. When they filmed the lift scene, it was filmed twice, once in Virginia and once here. Nobody seems to know for sure which one actually appears in the movie, so we both claim it. The one filmed here was filmed back to the left in the corner of the cove, just about where the black pontoon boat is parked. The two actors had been in the water so long they were on the verge of hypothermia. The director wanted to reshoot the scene and both actors refused. The other thing about that time of year is that the grass had already browned, the leaves had already changed color. Studios in the 80s couldn't change it back with a computer the way they can today, so every morning the director sent people out to spray the grass and the leaves with green food coloring to make it look like it was still summer. There's one scene in the movie toward the end where they didn't get everything sprayed, and if you watch the movie carefully, you can tell it was filmed in the fall because the colors are still visible. And over on the left is a little concrete dome sitting down in the water. It's partially obscured by the tree branches. That's just one example of how forward-thinking Dr. Morse was. That's a manhole for a sewer system he had installed in the lake bed in 1925. That sewer system is still in use, and almost every house on the lake is connected to it. On the right is a little brown boathouse that has a long set of stairs. That house used to have an inclined elevator that went from the house to the boathouse. Several years ago, for some reason, they had the elevator taken out. 4 years ago, the stairs were built, and that boat has never left the dock again. Truck was able to get there. The only thing it could do is keep the fire from spreading. The house burned to the ground. Nobody seems to know why the people who own it now leave it the way they do, or why they would leave that boat in the boathouse that hadn't moved in at least 10 years. They've had numerous offers for the property. They've turned them all down. The one good thing that happened because of that fire, it finally put enough pressure on the town so they had to buy a fireboat. That boat is docked at the dam a couple of miles from here and can make it from its dock to any house on the lake in 5 minutes or less. The big white house on the right was just completed last summer. It replaced a smaller house that used to sit there. The town has a 75-foot setback requirement, but they left a loophole in that requirement that says if you use any portion of the original foundation of the house you demolished when you build your new house, the town will consider it remodeling and not new construction. For 12 acres and has 24 miles of shoreline. It ranges in depth from 105 feet in front of the dam to 6 feet in the harbor that we left from. The average depth is about 50 feet. The lake is shaped like a cross. Behind us to the west is the base of the cross, that's Hickory Nut Gorge. The top of the cross is ahead of us, that's Sunset Cove. To the left, that's Rumbling Ball Bay. And the southern arm is ahead of us to the right, that's Tryon Bay. About 80 feet below us is the remains of a little community that was called Buffalo. It was a farming and mining town that had a couple of dozen residents, a church, and a cemetery. There was a family living in that community named Ledbetter. The Ledbetters owned a 1917 REO Speedwagon. It was a little farm truck. When they left their property for the last time, they left the truck on the property. And almost 40 years later, in 1965, their son Charles decided he was going to find it. He devised a rather unique way of doing that. He took a power boat, attached a long rope to the back end of it with a 20-pound horseshoe magnet on the end of the rope. He threw the magnet into the water and started dragging it back and forth across the bottom very slowly until it finally stuck. He sent a diver down to see what he had found, and it was the Speedwagon. But Charles wasn't satisfied to just find it. He wanted to pull it to the surface. He talked to his other 5 brothers to see if he could get some help from them, and they laughed at him and told him he'd lost his mind. It took him 6 years to break their resistance, but in 1971, the brothers did pull the truck up. They towed it over near the dam to Green's Marina, pulled it out of the water, spent 5 years working on it. The little truck's been leading parades around here ever since. About 4 months ago, sitting in front of the beach at an antique car show that we host every year. And over on the right side of the boat is a little greenhouse with a stone foundation. It sits between those two great big houses. That was the first house built on the lake. It was built in 1926. It's also the smallest house on the lake. It has 550 square feet, and that includes the boathouse at the bottom. Now the legend says that since there weren't any roads around here at the time that house was built, that the person who built it had to roll all of his building material from the end of Rumbling Ball Bay, where the sawmill was located, to the building site. That's about 1.25 miles. Pig Island. It was given the name Snake Island when Dr. Morse first arrived to see if there was development potential. He got ready to step off his boat, looked down, and noticed the ground wiggling. That concerned him, so he had his boat driver take him around the island for a closer look, and he found that it was covered with snakes. A lot of them were rattlers and copperheads, and he knew that he couldn't do any development work unless he found a solution for the snake problem. He ran an ad in the newspaper, and he offered $50 to anybody who could get rid of them. That doesn't sound like much, but in 1927, that was quite a bit. So there was a lot of interesting activity taking place over there, and none of it worked. A farmer answered the ad, and he brought a small rowboat over with 5 pigs in it and turned the pigs loose on the island.
After a year, the doctor came back to check and see if the 5 pigs had eaten all of the snakes. And they had, but now the farmer had a bigger problem. He had 12 pigs, and most of them were 300 pounds. So how was he going to carry all of those heavy pigs back in his little rowboat? So the doctor hosted a barbecue. Now we're passing the largest home on Lake Lure.
Last year it rented for $9,000 a week. It stayed rented almost every week during the season. Toward the end of the year they put it on the market. It was listed at $2.4 million. It didn't sell at that price, and about a month and a half ago they got a contract that they accepted for $1.9 million. It's unclear right now whether they're going to continue to rent it out or whether they plan to live in it.
We've had a lovely time on Lake Lure today. We're now pulling back in. This is the Lake Lure Inn where Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey stayed during their filming of The Dirty Dancing.